With me this evening are Cara Meeker, Jim Richards, and Pam Walsh, along with the superintendent. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent first to see if you had anything to present to us before.
No, I really don't. I think I showed you the agenda just a minute ago, but we'll work on policy and then know that in the new year, we'll be looking at all the 300 series around finance and also the 430, which is restraint and seclusion. So okay. That one's pretty intense and will require a lot of thought, and we'll have some folks, John will come in on our first meeting, we'll have some folks in to help with that. So, all right. Just so you know. But tonight we're going to focus on wellness. Yeah, tonight we're going to review policy number 530, wellness, and I will turn it over to Karen Fisher-Anderson to go ahead and start us off on that journey.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Before I launch, we have two special guests with us, and the third observer, sir, so you can feel free to. But anyway, we have Donna Reynolds, who's with us. She's our school nutrition director, in case you all don't know who she is. And then, of course, we have Fern Seiden with us, who's the director of wellness. So they've come in to be here available to you all to answer any questions in their particular lanes of expertise. You have in front of you student wellness. You have the current policy number 530, and then you have the recommended, the first draft of what came up as a result of some of the changes from the New Hampshire School Board Association, some changes in the law, so on and so forth, which we can address. The first thing I want to point out is the old policy was called student wellness. The new policy, one of the things we're recommending is that you change it to wellness, because it's, even though the old policy referred to staff in a couple of areas, the new one is clearly intended to cover not only students, but staff in the district as well. And it's, so that's one thing we'll be looking at. And so if you all agree with that and you end up forwarding the policy, then this is one of those that would be listed in two places within the policy manual. One would be 400 because that deals with personnel, and then 500s because that deals with students. Okay, and so I just put that out there so we can remember that administratively. Let's see, we did some vetting of this policy, as I said, both Fern, Donna, myself, Kathleen, and then I also wanted you to know that we took the latest edition and we shared it with the principals last week during the principal meeting, since they're stakeholders and they would be in charge of their individual wellness committees at their schools, and we got their input. So what you have in front of you tonight is the latest and greatest, with a lot of heads and time and space put into it, I hope. To give you a little bit of background just on where we are on this, we first as a district adopted a wellness policy back in 2006, and then we later revised it. It looks like the board revised it in March of 2017, and then again in August of 2018. The category, as you know, we have three. This is the highest category. It's a priority required by law, so we do need a wellness policy. But in June of 2020, the New Hampshire School Board Association took the wellness policy and they revised it to conform with federal regulations, and those were specifically the school lunch and the school breakfast programs, and that's where Donna can help us out, and also to make sure we were in conformity with New Hampshire Department of Education guidelines. So what you have in front of you are those changes, and then finally in August of 2020, there was some legislation with regard to water in our schools, specifically pertaining to water bottles. As some of you may recall, it was Senate Bill 233, and it amended the statute, which is 211B, and it said that students are permitted to bring certain types of water bottles to school, which is really important because we have to make water available to them. 2, it allowed principals to take disciplinary action if they misused their water bottles or brought in something other than water in their water bottles. And then it just mandated that any renovated or newly constructed public school buildings had to have water bottle filling stations. So the one thing I will tell you right up front for comparison is that when we were looking at our policy, and we looked at the sample policy that came in from the school board, we felt it was very important, Fern in her role, that we also include a section, and it's not very long, but we also address mental wellness as part of overall wellness. So there's a section in there about social emotional, and that does not appear in the sample policy, but again, it's specific to Concord. And then I tried, because I know less is more, in the current student wellness, a lot of the language that's in the current policy was incorporated into the new go-by. And so when you look in here, you'll see the dark. The red is just the changes. The cross-throughs are language that was, that I tried to make a little more direct. But what you have in front of you is the, as I said, the current and then the recommended draft for your review and suggestions.
I'm always happy when I see a one-page policy become a four-page policy. But,
Well,
I think
but some of it is crossed out too.
No, I
But we wanted you to
understand
see
that,
what was
that
crossed
a
out.
facetious comment.
But I do know, we do recognize that you like brevity, so.
Yes.
I think, first, before we open it up for more discussion, I'd like to ask Donna if you have any thoughts, comments on how the policy looks with respect to the food issues in school. And, I mean, welcome any comments that you might have along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've, again, not trying to make a shorter policy longer, but I think we've included some things that, really make sense, and I think we're right on target with, as far as the school meals goes. And then there's also the competitive food in schools, which is, under our jurisdiction as well, and I think we've addressed that in this new proposed policy. I also, not that this is to do with the food, but I do think a great addition that Karen had mentioned is, the social, emotional, and mental wellness piece that we've added, because we didn't have that in the previous policy, and that's something really important that we needed to add.
Okay. Fern, same question to you. Do you have anything you want to add to start with before we open it up?
No, I think it's a great step forward to include that and to see the connection between mental health and physical health, and to incorporate that, and the idea of stretching this to understand that when students, like, creating wellness is across the board for a whole community, so, yeah.
Okay. All right. I would just mention one thing that, just for the audience who may be watching, this is a first go-around through this policy. We call it a first reading, because at the end of this session, after everybody comments, we may take this and/or a slightly altered version of it and recommend that it go to the school board for what we call a first reading before they consider it a second time before passing it. So, all right, Pam.
Donna, your staff is amazing. I have to say the salads at the middle school that I saw the other day looked wonderful.
Thank you.
And the cafeteria, the lunch ladies always know what's going on. It amazes me how they keep track of so many kids. But I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about how, I know we meet standards, but occasionally I'm in the school during breakfast and sort of wondering how, like, the I don't know if it's Lucky Charms or Trix cereal bars, and I certainly hear from parents about that, how that falls in, especially when combined with what I saw my son pick, which was 2 juices to go with it.
So breakfast is kind of a different animal.
Yeah.
The regulations for breakfast are very, very different than for lunch, and I don't really want to try to explain
Can you
it.
bring your microphone closer? Because
yes.
this is aired.
Okay, and do I need to do anything?
No, you're fine, it's all
I'm
set.
good? Okay. So, it just very funny rules that they have for breakfast. Breakfast gets a really bad rap because it's very carb heavy. And I will say that, yes, you see the Lucky Charms, and the Trix and whatnot, but it's all lower sugar. we as, a school nutrition group have been asking our vendors and manufacturers for better breakfast choices. But, this is what we have. Everything has to be whole grain that we serve for breakfast. So a complete breakfast consists of a milk, 2 whole grain items, which might be just one item that counts as 2 grains, fruit, and a juice. And the students have to take at least 3 of those, items for it to be counted as a breakfast. So we can offer protein at breakfast, but it's not required.
And breakfast is pre-packaged. You're not cooking breakfast. So
We don't really cook breakfast. They
Yeah.
heat up things.
Yeah.
We do a lot of individual packaged items, which, isn't my favorite thing to do, but that just sort of exploded after COVID. And we only have 2 people in our elementary schools to, prepare all of the meals of the day, the breakfast, the lunch, and the fresh fruit and vegetable program. And the assistant isn't usually even in before breakfast. So we have very, limited hours, staffing hours to prepare breakfast. So it's, it's quick, easy grab and go type of things. Different schools have different options as far as breakfast. Everybody has the regular breakfast at breakfast time, but then a couple of our schools do a grab and go breakfast. Abbott Downing School, for example, does a huge grab and go breakfast, and that just means that it's offered, later on in the morning. We still count it and claim it as breakfast, but kids that maybe have eaten breakfast at home but want something at snack time can get
That's
that
mine.
type of breakfast.
That's my kiddo.
Oh,
She's always
okay.
like, Mom, it's not breakfast, it's snack.
It's snack,
It's
yeah.
late morning snack. And I'm like, you're straight up eating 2 breakfasts. But yes, they definitely go later in the morning.
Yes, yeah. So I agree with you. Breakfast sometimes doesn't look like it's as healthy as it should be, but it's kind of what we have. We do offer yogurt and string cheese and things like that for protein. And at the middle school and the high school, we do breakfast sandwiches and things like that. Just more staffing,
Yeah.
so we're able to do that.
My second question, and this is for probably both of you, which is the time we give kids to eat and for recess. My understanding is about 40 minutes combined in the elementary school, so 20 minutes to eat. I'm wondering how long it takes all the kids to get through in a typical lunch period to get through the line and get their food.
So it depends on the meal. Taco day is going to be a little bit longer than, chicken patty day. But a 5 to 7 minutes average, I would say.
So for the wellness person, is it healthy for kids to only have 10 minutes to eat their meal? And and does that lead to food waste and?
I think I would have to get more data here to see what the average is for how long kids are taking. That's a really good question. I know historically, just from my own experience, is that either you have, like, when you have too much time, that is also leads to a lot of difficulty with kids being able, using their time to eat, and what happens when you have kids sitting and waiting for the next thing. And then if you're the last person in line, you have very little time. So it is a challenge. It's a challenge, especially at developmental ages too. How to use your time wisely as a young child makes a big difference. But I think it's a really good question. I think we should probably, get more information on that. But I do know it's something that people, when they're making schedules, they're always trying to figure out what's the best amount of time. I mean, I do trust that in this district, as in all places, that we're always going, okay, how can we help kids have the right amount of time or the best amount of time that we can given our schedule for the day. I think it would be good to look at it more.
Can I make a comment? Last year, we saw that was a problem at the middle school level, and so they reorganized how the lunches were prepared and opened up multiple doors, 2 doors, so the kids were coming in from 2 different ways. And I think that was a tremendous change in the speed of which they at least got their meals and had time to eat it. Obviously, every grade level is a little different in terms of restlessness when they finish their meals, so, and wanting to go outside to recess. So that's always a challenge for the principals when they're doing schedules. But I think part of it was looking at the way we delivered, the time it took, and the organization of how the kids got their meals, and it did help.
We debated that exact question, Pam, and the language in there, we just wanted to be sure that from the policy standpoint that we said that each student had to have a designated lunch period. So no student should be able to take nothing but classes. You know what I mean? There has to be a break in there. Whether they choose to eat or not, we want them to have a time.
Oh, okay. So that's.
Is that cited here?
It's in here, it's in your new one under school meals, beyond accessible, that list of the 5, go down to your next one, all students will be provided designated lunch periods.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So, because we couldn't decide either about how much is enough.
So it's probably aimed more at high school students who want to.
Just go do
Take a
their
study
homework or meet in the band room or whatever.
I feel that 20 minutes isn't quite enough at the elementary level. That's my personal opinion, and I do feel like there's too much waste because they have to take a certain amount for it to count as a meal. And some kids it's plenty of time, and they're fine, and others, especially the little kindergartners, it's a lot for them to eat in that amount of time. I feel like. I know it's a big nationwide debate and has been for a long time.
And it's not necessarily to this policy, but
Right.
Just thinking as we move more towards more days in school, whether there's some flexibility and whether we should be looking at our recess and lunch scheduling.
Well, some of it is scheduling, and we also have contract requirements for teachers, and they need to be given a 30-minute lunch period. So everything, we have to build around that schedule along with the need for all kids to have a required lunch period. So that's part of it.
Just following up on what Pam said, in reading this policy, I found it very general and kind of aspirational. It doesn't really say a whole lot to me. I mean, physical activity, you have to meet national standards for physical activity. Doesn't say much more than that. The district offers opportunities for students to participate in physical activity after school through interscholastic and intramural sports and clubs. One sentence. It's probably not appropriate for a policy to get into the nitty-gritty, but since you guys are here, I just want to strongly encourage you to do better than what the policy calls for. Both on the food side and on the mental health and the physical activity side. I think it's fine to say that you're gonna serve lunch and that's it. But it'd be really nice, and we've discussed as a board, as you know, Superintendent, whether we ought to try to expand our free lunch program and that kind of thing. So, I mean, food security is an issue that we care about. So I just want you guys to hear that. And then just one other kind of off-the-wall question when we were talking about water. And it says, students shall be permitted to bring water bottles to school so long as they're filled with water.
Right.
Which makes sense.
You'd be surprised.
I just, is that opening us up to them bringing maybe water bottles that aren't appropriate? I'm thinking, I just don't want kids throwing water bottles at each other that are gonna hurt other kids.
Right.
You know?
And that's, sorry. I think that's why the language, and we put it in there, it was in there and I took it out because there was the disciplinary thing. Believe it or not, even at the elementary school, we had a case where a young lady brought in, no, it wasn't water, and it wasn't a beverage, it was alcoholic. And so we dealt with that. But the requirement by law is that the kids during meals have access to water. In our old schools, some of them, like the high school has filling stations, I know, but they have to have water bottles or something right in the food service area, is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It can be right outside the cafeteria within a certain distance, but
Yeah, so
really
if they
close.
have these, they can bring them in, you know, if it's
I mean,
but
that's fine, I just,
surprisingly, Bob, we have not had kids hit each other over the head with them.
I know, and some of them are really intense.
Oh my, I mean, I feel like
Stickers.
we've always had, I mean, I've always sent with a water bottle. My question was more, you know, if a parent wants to send milk, this policy would say that's not allowed. And obviously alcohol
or juice. Yeah.
shouldn't be allowed.
I sent Evie with tea,
Yeah.
and that was confiscated because it wasn't water.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, and then you have
But
the
which
issue.
which is fair. A rule is a rule, you know.
Yeah.
And
you're not fundraising, which we can talk about in a while, but the other thing is, are you competing with other school, you know, I know why
But
you're saying milk,
parents
because
allowed to send their own.
But
cold
we sell
lunch,
milk,
right?
we
Right.
sell milk.
Yes, but you sell school lunch, and parents are allowed.
Sure.
Parents are not required to buy a school lunch,
Absolutely.
and so they shouldn't be required to buy milk from school.
interesting. Yeah.
So, is the state law that they're only filled
Yes,
with?
it's just water. According to that, we can pull the Senate bill up.
Well, maybe we could suggest that, you know, they have to be allowed to bring water, but it, you know, somebody's discretion, other beverages could be allowed, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I guess the question is if the state law says it's restrictive or permissive. Like, we have to allow water bottles with water, but do we still have the authority to say, or other beverages, or other legal beverages that parents deem appropriate?
Yeah, I get you, water or non-alcoholic or
Yeah.
I
whatever.
mean, apple juice or whatever.
Oat milk.
You know.
Goat
And
milk.
if-
Oat milk.
Oat milk,
Oat milk,
yeah?
in case, they have allergies or
That-
something.
I mean, that's one I would think.
I'll look and see the exact language. I recall it just being water, but
But
again,
maybe we, as a policy, could be a little more expansive.
Well, then that's my question.
Right.
If the
We're
state law
allowed
says you
to
can
be
only
expensive.
allow water, I'd be surprised.
I would
but-
be very surprised.
Yeah. As opposed to you have to allow water.
right.
I would like to piggyback on the comments as I read through this. I do think the policy does have a real aspirational feel. There are terms used where things are required, like the school district will or the school will, but then we have things like schools should be mindful of the availability of balanced food options. Physical education and physical activity breaks should not be withheld. Does that mean shall not be withheld, must not be withheld, or is that should not be withheld but is still permissible? So I would just say as we get closer to a final version that we be mindful of our terminology just so that we know what is permissive, what is restrictive.
Yeah. We talked to the principals at great length about this.
Yeah, we did.
And they felt very strongly that, with regard to recess, that the language that said, there was language in there that said you can't withhold recess for punishment. And they said that was not something they would ever do, and they didn't want it in the policy.
Okay.
They felt it
That's
was.
not true.
Well, I'm just sharing with you what it's.
I mean, and I understand the sentiment, but the language is ambiguous,
Yep,
and so especially if that is something that a principal would like to be empowered to be able to do, they need to be able to say
Yeah, it should say shall.
shall or shall not or whatever, because we're using should as a suggestive term in other places in the policy, so we just need to.
Okay.
Whoa, time out here.
Shall.
Yeah, if you say shall, that means that they absolutely cannot restrict.
Right.
And the issues that they had is that they have, I would find that hard to believe that a youngster didn't get held back in a recess, maybe for some things that happened out there, needed some time to either meet with the principal or spend some time in a conversation. I think they want that flexibility. They were very clear about that. And I get that. I was a principal, and there's sometimes when they needed some time out from recess, they spent some time with me. I think
so
that's...
then why is it in the policy, I guess, is my question. Does it even need to be language in the policy? Other than the district will provide physical education consistent with national and state standards. The district encourages students and staff to participate in developmentally appropriate physical activity. And then this is my next question, and exercise for 30 to 60 minutes every day to minimize health risks.
I would agree. If you took it out, that would give them the flexibility to
Right.
make that
If that's what you're
decision. Right.
seeking.
They need to have some... There needs to be some consequences, if you will, and I know that's not the right word I'm using, but there is. I mean, kids' behaviors and how they interact on the playground and the play yard is important. And principals and school counselors and assistant principals work with that all the time, so they need to have that flexibility. So if we take it out, I think they'll be happy so that they have the ability to do that. Just like giving a detention.
Is there a reason that it's in, like in terms of
Yeah, because the,
requirements?
It was a recommendation that we put that in because they didn't want, I mean, you don't want an overabundance of using that as a discipline. If a youngster's struggling outside, maybe it's more than just the poor choices they make. Maybe it's about the playground area and the large size of it and not being able to function in that. Or maybe it's interactions with their peers. There might be other reasons, and so you want to... But it was we just didn't want it to be used.
Was it a recommendation by the school board association?
yes.
Yeah,
So not statute, not
not
federal
statute. Yeah.
recommendations or rules?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in some of the, and I'm looking at the references right now, I want to say that USC 1779, because I did some research on this, 42 U.S. Code talked about the fact, it gets into, and I know you all know this, but the kids sitting all day long without getting up and being able to exercise or go to gym class, and they don't have gym that day or whatever else, that it really does impede the academics, the learning process. Yeah. And so that's why we put we followed the recommendation, but.
Well, I think if we were going to be aspirational here, then this is an opportunity to be aspirational in a way that talks about not just sort of policies, but that we recognize that physical activity is critical to student learning. And, we encourage students and staff to, like that's a place to be, encourage students, staff to take walking breaks and go outside and go to gym class and move around their
But still to
classrooms.
give the teachers or the principal
Yeah.
the authority to sit them down if they need to be sat down.
Dance to go noodle.
Right.
Well, that's why we went with the word should and not shall, because they should, but there are going to be occasions when they need to impose some sort of consequence.
Can we go back up to celebration?
But before we do that, do you want that statement more aspirational then? Or is it?
I like the notion of, saying that it helps them learn to be
Of course,
active.
yep.
And my only point was that the language to me seemed questionable enough that I wasn't sure if it was restrictive or suggestive.
Right.
So I'm just saying, our terminology can be more explicit. If something is aspirational, we can be clear. If something is required by law, we can be clear.
Well, it's like the word mindful.
Right.
We were trying to say that you got to think about the celebration and events, and if you have only chocolate and whatever, cupcakes and not any other options that there's available of fruit and vegetables and popcorn or things like that that aren't quite as sugary. We were trying to get that to make them understand that's why we put it in there like that.
And words like encourage with the physical activity.
Yeah.
We want them to get 30 to 60 minutes, so they each started counting how long in between classes, who gets PE, who gets recess.
Oh my God.
So it was
yeah.
quite a,
Okay, so I get that.
Come back to
We'll
my
get that a little
original
better.
comment.
Yeah, we'll get that
This
better.
seems general and aspirational,
Yeah.
the whole policy, so, you know, as opposed to some of our policies, which are very
Explicit.
clear.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you know, so, but maybe that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, I mean,
These
this
are
is
more
a
like
tough one.
Guidelines for wellness,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
But it's sprinkled with things that are required, right? Like the RSA about water bottles.
Right.
Like that is something we have to reflect in the policy, and it's sort of like put in the middle of other more guideline-like
Yeah.
sections.
And you think about water bottles, what are we putting in all the schools? We're putting in the refills, right?
Right.
You can't, there's no cup there to fill the refill. You
Right.
gotta bring your bottle, and the kids fill up at the water station, and they want us using those, they don't want you using the old bubblers anymore.
Right.
So they're encouraging us to put those in.
I love it. I mean, I think a water bottle is a great idea for hydration.
Yeah.
I think it should be in there. I think it reflects
Yep.
the intention of the law. Maybe we can be more permissive if we do a little research.
And you don't want it to be single use. I mean,
No.
that's
Right,
the
so,
whole-
so we're, yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
Pam, you were.
Jim?
No, I was just going to, first of all, I want to thank you for putting in the mental wellness part. It is a little vague and aspirational, and I understand that, but it's better than not having it in before, which is what we had before. The other thing I'd just say, to piggyback on some of the things we were discussing earlier, is as you look at times, and I'm happy to hear that the middle school is better, because I've talked to a lot of parents, and the middle school was the one they're most concerned about. Please make sure you're looking at the fact that if lunch period starts with when they get up to leave their classroom, which may be a fairly long distance away from the cafeteria, that, you know, you're factoring those things in, because one of the items I've heard from parents, and they're very concerned, is by the time they get into the line, it's only 7 minutes or 10 minutes until they get in there, but it took them 10 minutes or 7 minutes to get there in the first place. And then in the end, we have kids that are, you know, too rushed to finish or to be able to eat. And so I would just ask you, as you look into those things, to make sure you factor that in as well. And then the only other thing I saw here, it may be what you're looking at too, but not to put words in your mouth, but we don't say anything about celebrations and events or anything that require them to be aware of allergies that other kids, not in this. And that's just a bit of a concern, because, you know, someone with a nut allergy could really, it seems like we should have a list or have a guideline going to parents from the particular class, in my opinion. And I'm not sure how you word that, but I just think that would be something that we might want to put in the policy to be aware of.
Jim, on C, on page 2, we did say that Donna kind of got voluntold, but was gracious enough to say she would help us come up with a smart snack nutrition standards.
Okay.
So that will hopefully be, you know, sent out to the parents, or we can make it an, I don't know what you want to make it an appendix, but that is something we, you know, trying to get away from the cupcakes and the cake for a couple reasons. One, nutrition. Two, there's an equity argument there. And so maybe there's different ways. I know a lot of the schools celebrate birthdays by announcements, you know, for each of the months whose birthday it is. So, but that is one of the things we wanted to make sure that we came up with, or some other good ideas. And I actually looked into it. I was like, what more could they do? They can do dance parties and glow parties, and I don't know what a glow party is.
Have you supervised those?
No.
Okay.
Get a little loud.
Okay.
So maybe you have a sash that the
Yeah.
child gets to wear, or a hat, or some, you know, there were some really cool, like, theme parades, scavenger hunts. So anyway, good luck on that.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that in our policy that we are
say-
being mindful to
Yeah.
those.
I
things
like
you
the
made.
sensitivity to allergies.
Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
availability of balanced
Yeah.
food options during celebrations, events, and mindful of student allergies.
Yeah, yeah.
My question was actually about food and beverages will not be used as a reward or withheld as a punishment. Obviously, I'm fine with not being withheld as a punishment. But, you know, sometimes the school teachers or the PTO, or they'll do a competition, and, you know, which class brings in the most for the food pantry, gets a pizza party, or if you guys do all of this, you get ice cream, and
I mean, I see my kid will walk out of school with a lollipop, and I'm like, "What's it for?" And they're like, "There's a party," and I'm like, "But why?" You know, like there's definitely reward-based snacks happening. So it's a good point.
Stickers? Maybe there's other ways to go.
well, do we agree with that should be
But
the
is-
policy? I mean, I guess is where,
Is it a bad thing to give a kid an M&M for smelling?
Well, that's for
I'm
instruction.
not an educator, so, but,
Well, and it's a good question because again, the phrasing "foods and beverages" will not be used.
Yep.
So I view "will not" as essentially "shall not," and "should" as
Maybe the word in question is reward. I mean,
yes, that's my question. I'm fine with the second part of
I think the punishment part of it
it.
is
Yeah.
fine, but, yeah.
so you want to take out reward? Is
Well,
that
I'm
what I'm hearing?
raising the issue.
right. Is it
Unless it's I mean,
Best
I don't know whether
practice?
it's
Yeah,
already.
we really tended to not use food as a reward for
Yeah.
learning. I have to be, I understand the celebration piece, but for a long time, we have really refrained from using food to reward learning. And I understand that, and but as educators, that's been pretty much the norm.
how about as an educational reward?
But you're right, the PTA will have a prize, like a food, like a pizza party. I've heard that, or they have an ice cream sundae where they can make their
Or the
ice
teachers will
cream.
do it for,
Yeah,
good behavior, for, or after they sit through those horrible state assessment
Right.
tests.
Who doesn't want to make their kids happy after those? Yeah.
You could almost see it as versus a celebration, so you can celebrate with food, like celebrating the end of the test, or celebrating the end of the year, or celebrating the food, the collection of, for the PT.
So maybe if we talked about will not used as a,
I think the reward piece is getting to that.
yes,
educational
so
piece.
it's the, how do you parse that as opposed, without saying that class-wide celebrations are not allowed, unless you add while
Well,
class-wide celebrations are allowed, food and beverages will not be used as.
or maybe we leave it up, it doesn't have to be part of the policy, but the individual principals can say what they want, or you, superintendent, can.
yeah, I like to have some
Discourage things.
standard across the board with all of the schools, just so we have some consistency from building to building. It does help.
So maybe you wanna think about that one?
Yeah,
the wording of
I'm
that
gonna
one?
think
Yeah,
about
like
the
pull 'em
wording
apart,
on that one.
maybe.
I have no problem with a reward and a celebration and for what the students do, but I do have it when you're, dropping, Skittles on their desk because they understood their math facts. That's what that was
Yeah.
intended for, but we
Okay,
didn't
yeah.
say it very well.
Yeah.
So let us go back and rewrite that.
Okay.
I also had a question on the fundraisers, just for clarity.
Yep.
For
Wait,
school
oh.
year, is that only includes the ones during the school day?
Yeah, and USDA defines the school day as 12:01 a.m. to 30 minutes after the final school bell.
Okay.
And so where that came from, just so you know, is USDA told the state agencies, in this case DOE, you will come up with a number of fundraisers and bake sales, or there will be none. New Hampshire used to only have 3, now we have 9. So that's why we put that in there, because we wanted to be clear on, so,
Okay.
So I would just add, after fundraisers during the school day per school year, just so it's clear that you're not talking about like
Weekend.
the bake sale at the movie night or something.
yeah, and athletics, of course, is after
Right.
school.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you want USDA, do you want, I tried to stay less formal, USDA definition of what the school day is,
No.
so it's clear?
No.
Or just say
No.
during the school day?
During the school day.
Still
Okay.
hold up to 9
Yeah.
sales are fun
I don't think
Raisers
anybody's
per
going to be
year.
trying to
per,
squeeze in like
during
a,
the school
Yeah.
day
Double
per
bake
school
sale.
year.
I was gonna say that 1 a.m. bake sales.
Yeah. I don't know, man. That might pull some people in.
I know.
I'd be like, I'm up.
I don't know how they came up with 9, except for the example they gave. They said one school had 3 fundraisers, each fundraiser was 3 days. Back to back. So we got 9.
It's kind of like a once a month
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Under wellness, mental health, mental wellness, do we want to point to anything in here about the resources that are available to students and families and faculty? You know, is critical for academic achievement and success, and to further that provides EAP for employees, social workers, and school counselors.
It does mention the multi-tiered system of support.
Right, which
Karen,
is
don't we have
point
other policies
to
on this?
something else
What's
for
that?
Don't we have other policies on this? I'm trying to think which.
Yeah, we do. On the
Yeah.
multi-tiered, it's the
Yeah.
behavioral interventions policy, which is
Yeah.
541.1,
Yep.
I think. And then I have down 590.
I'm wondering if we can point to that in the policy.
Right.
What's that, where it is?
Like just
This
the,
kind of reference.
Yes, see, 540.1.
Right.
Yeah.
You got it.
Rather than list it all out, just reference the policy.
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
Thank
we
you.
had actually talked at one point about, should we say, go, visit the district website to learn with it, and we said, well, those are things that don't really connect to a
It's really not
policy.
policy.
Because that could change, but we wanted to connect it to resources, so it's interesting that you pulled that out and saw that. You could add
So
something about
540,
resources will be made publicly available through various, we could kind of put something in there about how we want to make resources available to the community.
Other thoughts, questions?
I did have a question about the smart snack nutrition standards. Is that something that exists or will exist?
It exists.
It exists, okay.
Yes.
And is that also something that's referenced in the citation portion? Like if I was like, for instance, we had a school dance last year where all the parents were encouraged to bring an item. And if I wanted to find a smart snack nutrition standard to help me with that, would I Google it?
There's actually a tool. It's a very
Okay.
easy tool, and you just fill in things, like it starts out with what age level you're talking about, and then it kind of, asks other
And where-
questions
where do
about
you-
what you're
where do you
saying.
find
So where does the tool?
So you just can Google smart,
Okay, so it's a
smart
Google,
snack
okay.
calculator. So we could put that in there, right?
Yeah, I was
Karen?
gonna say,
Yeah.
maybe it would be helpful just to the public in general to know that exists and.
Well, we were gonna put.
I think we should just start putting Google it in all of our.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like if it doesn't point to a law, it's just Google it.
Just Google it.
If you
Yeah.
take a look at our annual notification of the policy, one of the things we're required to post this wellness policy in the student parent handbook.
Okay.
So I think that might be another place where we
Yeah.
could put the
Good
healthy
place.
snack
That one.
and on the district website. So we'd have it under nutrition.
Yeah, that'd be
Mhm.
very helpful to parents,
So-
I think.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, as I read through it, I agree with Cara. It's like, we have legal references, but this isn't a legal reference, this is a helpful reference. And, that's critical, I think, for parents to be able to just say, oh, this is where I can find that.
So it says the district nutrition director will make a list of healthy party suggestions. Healthy party snack, probably should have snack. in
Healthy
it.
snack.
Suggestions available. I guess, do
Healthy
we want to
party
keep
Snack.
smart snack in there, or just say which meet nutrition standards? Because smart snack could be the phrase today, and
Right.
2 years from now, it could be,
What's on that USDA?
Smarter snack.
Yeah, it is.
smarter snacking, yes.
The smartest snack.
It's
So,
true.
and we can use smart snack in the parent student handbook, that's fine, but maybe here we just say which meet nutrition standards, so we're not pointing to something that might be outdated.
I agree.
So Pam, how would you want that, including a list of foods and beverages which meet,
Nutrition standards.
okay.
And
Yeah.
then,
I mean,
And
is
then we'll
smart snack a federal?
Post
It is,
the,
it's
So
So it could just be
USDA.
federal nutrition, the most up-to-date.
and then
federal
we'll post
nutrition
the
standard.
link for smart snacks in
yeah,
the,
you can do that.
in the student handbooks,
Yeah, I think
parent student
that's
handbook.
fine, I just think
Yeah,
that's
that's
something
fair.
that could get rebranded.
Definitely.
Current federal nutrition
Probably will be.
standards or something similar.
Okay.
Or maybe just not even federal,
Just meet
current.
nutrition
Nutrition
Current-
standards.
Current, that's a
Yeah.
good word, current nutrition standards.
I
Because again, I wouldn't mind at all if our standards were a little
I
higher than the
don't know
federal
that
standards.
you even need current because it implies,
That'll change.
Yep.
current is always, you know, the
Okay.
nutrition standards are assumed to be current. So I would just say, which meet nutrition standards.
Okay, have we fixed it apart enough? Let's see.
So do we think, are there other comments before? we move
I don't
on a
think
little
so.
bit? Do we think that this is close enough to send to a first reading yet, or should we?
I'd like to see it one more time.
Yeah.
Maybe we wait.
Oh, plus
for another-
the new
I would like to
committee.
redo it for you and make all the corrections and have you review it one more time. That might not be you, but it'll be
Yeah.
another
I-
part of the board.
I think I
But
agree with that, so.
I'm uncomfortable doing that.
Okay,
'cause
we're,
that's-
we're not in any violation of any time
No,
limits or anything,
no,
so,
no.
fine.
No. I mean, you have a policy in place, so it's
Yeah.
not like that you don't have anything.
So that would be January, right?
But
We'll look
we'll
at
put
it
this in
again
the January
January.
policy committee meeting.
Yep.
In January, you have two policies anyway in your board, will be two second reads.
Right.
So you're okay, you're busy.
Yeah.
And we're gonna probably slow down a little bit, only because you have 2 months of budget, February and March. And you're
Yeah,
2 nights
frankly,
anyway.
the restraint and seclusion policy is
That's gonna
take
be
of
a lot,
time.
a lot. And like I said, we need a little bit more time for doing the finance pieces, just because we're reviewing all of them.
And on the finance pieces, I think it would make sense to have at least an initial joint meeting with the finance committee on that,
I agree.
that you're getting their input.
And to have Mr. Dunn here.
and-
Yeah, Jack would be here, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think we have anything else formal on the agenda. We do have 2 guests with us tonight. We normally don't have public comment at these hearings. But if people are willing, we can give you each a few minutes to say why you're
Yeah,
here.
we have time. We have time.
Thanks. So Stacy Brown, and I'm a city councilor, and I'm on committee, the Transportation Policy Advisory Committee. And we are looking at updating our master plan for transportation to include public transportation, biking, walking, and I would really love to do an overlap with the school to really encourage more walking and biking of students. I know at the last meeting, Tom Croto had stood up and said, kids don't walk anymore, and I want to change that. I think he's probably right that, because of COVID, people feel safer in their personal vehicle, but I really want to encourage more kids biking. I'm also on energy and the environment, and we have our goal is to be 100% renewable resources for electricity for the city by 2030, that's 6 years, and by thermal and transportation by 2050. So these are very lofty goals, and but if we don't think about it, we don't plan for it, we're never going to get there. And so I really would love to include or be involved with the school board in transportation planning and including kids on community rides, maybe doing some community bike buses to the schools where we round up parents and kids and kind of get like a group going to the school together so they feel safer. And I've got some business leaders and other counselors who are on board, and I feel like, if we show that the public wants to do this, then we'll be investing in better infrastructure for that, so we can kind of work towards that sustainability goal. So, and I know that there was a decision made at the last meeting, and this is an appeals board, so I'm just looking at the different footprints of where most of the students are and the development, and the 2020 census, where the populations are. That if you just consider that piece and just be open-minded to the location that's best for including, for getting more of our population biking and walking. That's all.
Appreciate that, Ms. Brown. You know, kind of fits into the wellness discussion that we've been in.
I noticed that,
So-
even the conversation about
So-
access to the lunchroom, having
Yeah.
different avenues enables kids to get there better. And I was talking with Terry Prati, and really this is just me learning about what you do and what you're facing and how you're doing it and how we can overlap and work together better.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Yeah.
can I just say, I think that's an outstanding idea. There are, I know at Beaver Meadow, they had walking buses in place before COVID. And then the other thing is I would invite you to just explore, because I think it's a great opportunity. Places like Boulder, Colorado would have cooperative buses, sort of, that they would flex to help during the city buses, or those buses would flex to help out for after school and those type of things, and then be available otherwise. And I think there's some great opportunity if we collaborate with that
Love
to be
to do
able to
that.
do those
Love to
things,
do that.
and then use those. I mean, if we're using energy, then use it a little cooperatively and use it to benefit. The infrastructure to benefit both groups.
Yeah, absolutely, and just kind of take the strain off different groups, where there's like a childcare piece, and maybe we can get more people working, and we can address the bus driver shortage, and just to see how we can support each other better. I am all over that. Please, let's. I would love to learn more and do that. What was it called? It's in Colorado.
It was in Boulder. They used that, and they used the city buses during times of peak travel for commuters to supplement the school district needs, which ended up using less buses overall and better utilization of the equipment that they had. So I think there's some opportunity there, and I think that the district and the city could really find some cooperative areas there.
That would be great. I'm totally on board with that.
Okay, thank you for coming. Sir, do you have any
No, thank you.
comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Any other business to come before the board?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you for your great chairmanship.
Yes, oh, that's
Yes,
right,
thank
our
you.
last one together.
Oh, it's so sad, I know. Yeah.
Aw,
Who
you-
seconded that?
It may not be our
Thank you.
last one.
So,
Okay, thank you.
Got a motion by Cara, second by Pam, and all in favor?
aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays,
Have a nice
everybody.
holiday.
Oh my gosh, happy